It's a sign of intelligence.
I know.
And welcome back to the Midday Show. I am Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina. I just noticed you had a Cowboys shirt on, but you're not really showing it in the picture.
I will.
It's not a good sign for your team.
What's wrong?
If you're not proud enough to show it off, it's not a good sign for your season.
As I tell everyone, in biblical times, even in biblical times, the wise men followed the star. That's what I tell people.
It feels like it was biblical times since you guys
did anything of
importance. We're going to talk about Penn State football because they've come out and I don't want to say they've
because it's been a while since they've done anything important.
We can get into that too. But we're going to talk about the stadium. We're going to talk about tailgating. We're going to talk about
admittance.
Yeah, we're going to talk about admittance. We're also going to talk about we're going to touch shortly kind of like on the booster shots and kind of what that means for the world. We're going to talk about the MLB Classic. And then I clicked on the greatest clickbait of all time. I know you're the clickbait king.
I think you clicked on a fake clickbait because I don't think this can hit. This cannot make sense in the natural world. But you're going to tell us. And
it is. It's pretty neat. But before we get to all of that, Mark, how are you feeling today?
Mark is good. Still has a desk full of these Lifesaver mint things. And but other than that, I mean, if people could hear the verbal abuse I take before we go on the air, they would feel sorry for me.
What was the verbal abuse today?
You're just mean. You're just mean and ornery to me.
You think so?
Yes.
I mean, in my defense, I do everything.
You asked me for a sound check, and I start talking, and then you tell me to shut up.
I'm like the single mother. I have to cook and clean.
I am the single mother. It's not inaccurate.
I have to. I mean,
but it's funny.
I'll take the opportunity to vent. I have to do the graphics. I have to convince you to what do you want to talk about? I then have to come up with the banners. I then have to get the mics ready. I then have to get the platform ready. I then have to convince you to log in.
This is what happens when you come in and have all the technological expertise.
Yeah, so maybe I do get a little.
It's not like this isn't like mowing the grass. Like you do it because I don't want to. I don't know how.
No,
right, Poppy?
I'm just saying.
Do you see how mean he is to me?
I'm just saying that I think me being a little curmudgeon-y, I think I've earned it. I think I've earned the right to be a little.
You know what? It's hard to argue with that. I agree.
With that. Let's go with this. Penn State won't require proof of vaccination, negative COVID-19 test to attend football games.
Do they open this week?
That I don't know. I'd have to look at their schedule to be sure. Akila, please.
Hey, Pop, we're on the air. Keep it down.
Here's where it goes. Penn Live is the one I'm reading it off of. Penn State won't require fans at Nittany Lion football games this fall to present proof of vaccination or a negative COVID-19 test in order to gain entrance to Beaver Stadium. This is coming from the vice president of Intercollegiate Athletics, Sandy Barber. The required vaccination is not in our plan at this point. However, on Friday, Oregon and Oregon State became the first Power 5 football programs to announce they will require proof of vaccination or a negative COVID-19 test to attend games. So they are kind of starting the ball rolling. What is your initial reaction?
Well, according to this, they opened at Wisconsin. They opened with a conference game on the 4th.
Okay.
Which is unique.
Yeah.
And then they host Ball State, and then they host Auburn. So they would be home the 11th and the 18th. So the first one, oh, yes, we talked about that. The first home game is on September 11th. We did talk about that before. Yeah. So that is correct. They open at Wisconsin. That is a twist.
It is.
Usually, if there's a lot of times people open with patsies. Penn State has been notorious for playing, Toledo and, Georgia State and all those teams. But the big ones are historically kind of non-conference-ish. Okay. Clemson versus, Auburn or something in a conference battle.
Got it.
So for the Big Ten to open with the Big Ten, I think is incredibly rare. But what do I know?
Yeah, they might not have had a choice. The real twist was you completely going off and deciding to talk about the Penn State football schedule. Do you have an opinion on them allowing?
Well, no. I mean,
107,000
I
people
know
in the
we've touched on
stadium?
this before. Hey, Pop, come here. I just get to the point. Like, what do you do? I think.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think
Can you imagine the finances of having to like rapid test people coming in and out? Now, it sounds like Oregon's putting the onus on the fan, like they have to show up with proof of a negative test. But I mean, the finances.
So let me not to be, and I get what Oregon's doing, and I appreciate it. And I know it's a very Oregon's kind of a different country in its own right, almost. How are they going to check? I have my vaccine card. I have a picture of it on my phone.
Right.
But you just show up with a vaccine card. How are they going to be like, well, this isn't you. This is a photocopy. I don't know. Like driver's license, when you go into bars, they scan them.
Your face is on it. And
yeah. How are they? Are they really with 100,000 people at Penn State can be like, this isn't you. This isn't your card. How do I know they did? So I think that there's going to be a lot of common sense in the world where, number one, you don't have a barking dog in the background when you're doing a broadcast.
It's true.
Number two, no, you're okay.
Keep going.
Okay. Number two, I think they're going to go with the kind of the buyer beware. And if you're afraid to go to a large event where there's going to be 100,000 people, then don't go.
No, I agree with that. It kind of comes back to the pro-choice thing again, where, you know, if you're really worried about it, don't go to the football game. I know that sounds, I don't know. I guess that doesn't sound rude necessarily, but I agree with you. Logistically, I don't know how you would even do it if you wanted to do it. Like, I don't know.
And it sounds good. Make them show a card. You tell me someone wants to go. If someone's a non-vaxxer and wants to go to Penn State game, you tell me they can't come up with a card?
Oh, yes.
I'm
amazed. That's the other reason why they're talking about like the whole New York City pass and all these different things that they're doing for vaccination. Right now, I think it's so duplicable.
Well,
like,
that's
I don't
the thing.
feel like I always used to laugh at the old Social Security cards, because I always just kind of thought to myself, I was like, these, A, they'll never last. And B, like, I just felt so easy to just kind of take or copy and that's how these vaccination cards feel. Like, they don't feel very, I like sustainable maybe is the word, or like usable. Like I have kept mine in my wallet it stays right here on the one side of my wallet. It never leaves, and I've yet to use it. Like, this is the first time I've pulled it out of my wallet since
I took a picture of mine, and mine is at home.
Okay.
My hard copy is at home, and I have a picture of mine. But again, the same thing when you're like scanning it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Now I will say this again. There's no perfect solution. So if you do the buyer beware, and if you're concerned, don't go. That does suck for the people who have season tickets, who don't want to give up their season tickets because it's so hard to get them back at Penn State, but they don't want to pay for season tickets that they can't use. So then they go into selling, and then so I do get all that to say to people, well, then just don't go. And then people say, but I've paid thousands and thousands of dollars not to just not go. And now I have to hold on to these so yeah, I don't know, but
it's not Penn State's fault. It just comes back to like everyone's just trying to save themselves from being liable. So like I know last week they came out and announced students at Penn State, when they're indoors, have to wear a mask. And then if you're unvaccinated, you have to do like weekly COVID-19 testing. So to me, it's just like the irony of like they're putting in these things for the students, but then you're going to have 150,000 people, probably more, show up on a Saturday for a football game, and no one's going to. So again, it's not Penn State's fault. It's not anybody's fault. We're all in this weird situation where we have to cover ourselves for liability. But like the irony of it, like the hypocrisy of like what you can and what's allowed and what's not, is like mind-numbing.
The other thing, as you talk about this, is we're going back to colleges. My daughter's heading off to Pitt tomorrow, and I think one of the stats that she just fired out at me is they by their estimates, the student body is like 92 or 94% vaccinated.
Okay.
But the faculty is much lower. The faculty is much closer to 50%.
Sure.
So now
I'm blown away it's that high. Did they have can you want to say where she's going, or would you
she's going to Pitt. I just said that.
Is
it's
Pitt
that high? The students
I'm
or the
shocked it's that high.
For the kids?
Yes. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm happy it's that high, but I'm shocked it's
I don't think because so many schools are mandatory.
Okay.
And so I think I think the younger people are just not as. I think the younger generation is just different.
Yeah.
Than the older. They're more tolerant. They're more.
I feel like a state school is not even going to be close to that.
Maybe you might be right.
I mean, I could not. I'm not trying to put one up or put one down, but I just feel like that percentage is so high. I feel like a state school, like if a state school gets to 70%, I would be like impressed.
I get what your point. I think one of the things that the life lessons that we're learning from this is that if you look at, okay, here's the problem. We'll do one step.
Right.
And then what is it? We've seen with stimulus checks and we've seen with unemployment benefits. Then all of a sudden, no one's working, and now it's causing this backlash, this ripple effect that no one thought about because they didn't do any advanced thinking.
Sure.
So what do you do if you're a university and you're highly recommending? And they're talking. I know there were things in place, like if you don't have a vaccine, I think you had to live by yourself. Or maybe you had to wear a mask at all times on campus or something like that. They had stipulations for the vaxxed and unvaxxed. So you're making all these things to strongly encourage your student body to get vaccinated. Students are getting vaccinated. The parents are paying very good money for the students to come to campus. But now the teachers or the professors don't have to be vaccinated. So now if the professors are choosing to have only Zoom classes, then why am I paying all this money to send my kids to campus if the professor isn't even coming to campus? So there's going to be trickle downs from all this, and all these, Penn State football. What decision do you make? All these college campuses, all these private businesses. Now you talked about state schools and public education is a different animal, but what do you do? Yeah. It's going to continue on and continue on. And we're going to see decisions, and more importantly, we're going to see people are starting to question what are the ramifications of these decisions. And if we make all the students get like Bucknell is probably a perfect example. They're making the students get vaccinated, but what happens then if in turn they don't make the professors get vaccinated?
Yes. The Penn State one, and again, I'm not saying they should or shouldn't. The Penn State one to me is a perfect example of what I talked about earlier, where like people just aren't going to be willing to do the status quo like they did a year ago. And I think the things that Penn State football did a year ago, there was no way they were going to start off that way again. Like they're going to say, we're going to find out the ramifications. Where a year ago, they were saying, we're not going to be the cause of it, or we're not going to risk it, or we're not. And I think that's what you're going to see this fall. I think you're going to see a lot of people that are they're not going to be willing to go back to what they did before.
Not yet.
I think Penn State football,
least not yet.
No, not yet. And I think Penn State football is an example of that.
Yes.
Let's do real quick. The Biden administration, we talked about a little bit. They're talking about boosters. However, there's a side of the booster thing. I was kind of reading it to you here before the show. There is a couple of doctors from like Hopkins and scholars from across the country that they're saying like there's a morality, there's an issue to us having these boosters before a lot of countries or a lot of parts of the world have not even received their first vaccination shot yet. For example, one of the statistics that a doctor gave from Johns Hopkins, less than 2% of the continent of Africa has received their first vaccine shot. I had never thought of it. Like you and I talk a lot out loud and we try to find different ways to look at different things. I had never thought my egocentric American self was just kind of like, all right, line them up. Like if you want it, freedom of choice, go get it. And like, let's do it. I had never really thought about the ramifications outside of our borders or what people would think about the idea that some of us would be getting a third shot before a whole entire continent would almost be getting their.
Well, yeah, we've become ignorant to the fact that here we're just like, do you want it or not?
Yeah.
Where we haven't thought about places where they still can't get it even if they want it. And I think the line that the guy uses, it's like the Titanic, like everything for the first class, nothing for the steerage.
That was that was his example.
And it is interesting. And just from a morality standpoint, what
I don't know how I feel about it. Like, this is truly a thinking out loud, because using the Titanic reference, like, they still had to buy the ticket to get on the Titanic. Like, everyone had to buy a ticket. Like, it's not like you got on the boat for free. Like, you still had to do the right things. Now, I realize that there's people in other countries and other parts of the world that it's so beyond their control. And even if they wanted to get a shot, like, they might not be able to right now. Like, I'm not naive enough to ignore that. But I am just saying, like, I don't know. It's hard. Should I feel bad? We've talked about this with other things, right? Like, this might be the biggest gap between you and I as far as like left and right and center. And I always say,
because you never feel bad.
No, it's not about feeling bad, but I always talk to you a lot of times about, like, whenever I'm supposed to feel bad or I'm made to feel bad because of an opportunity or because of circumstances that I may fall into or that I have. And I feel like a third booster shot before a third world country getting their first shot is a perfect example of that confliction. Like, I don't know how to feel about that.
I don't think it's necessarily about how you should feel about it. I think it's an aspect of how the higher ups should handle it. And should they say, we have these booster shots for Americans, but we need to, because only so many were produced, and the aspect is that people hoarded them for, and there's only so much supply at a time. I don't know. It's interesting. I hadn't thought about it. But one of the other aspects, while we're on the COVID topic, while we were reading about it, I read from a doctor who came on, I don't know what his story, but he talked about how many hundreds of COVID patients he's treated, how many dozens of death certificates he signed, and he was just like, get vaccinated, get vaccinated, get vaccinated. But one of his angles was that he has seen firsthand is the survivor guilt of people, because as he said, most times we can trace where we got it. I got COVID, my mother got it first, I got it days later. We're not really sure where she got it because it was in the winter and she was careful and didn't go many places, but she had been to a couple basketball games. She had been to the grocery store and things like that. Right. She hadn't been a hermit, but she hadn't done many places. But lots of times that people can tell which family member got it, then everybody got it, or you got it at a picnic or a barbecue or whatever the case may be. And most cases are mild. Mine was very mild. My mother was hospitalized. And but again, since she got it first, I didn't feel guilty. But these people where family members are actually dying and they can trace it through, and they're like, well, I only had mild symptoms, but so-and-so is no longer here anymore. And the guilt that these survivors are dealing with is a real thing in many families. So it's another angle of this, of the whole, like, I don't want to get vaccinated, I don't want to do it. But then it's kind of like the drunk driving aspect. It's not, do you kill yourself? It's, do you kill someone else?
The survivor's remorse is so real. It's probably not talked about enough. Like, not that we should have like these, depressing talks or anything, but like, survivor's remorse is a very, very real thing. And like, when you talk about it, like at clinics or rehabilitation facilities and stuff like that, it is like one of the main triggers for people who fall back into their habits. Is they feel as if they've gotten away with something, or they've been the cause of somebody else suffering, or like, why did I make it and they didn't? And then they'll fall, people that were sober for so many years, people that had kicked a bad habit fall back into it. So survivor's remorse is like, it's a much stronger feeling than what I think anybody would know, because until it's happening, no one's walking around. It's not like a cause that people talk
about. But those are like, car accidents. And I was in the car and I lived, and so-and-so was in the car and they didn't, and why them and not me? And I sat in different seats. But this is more like, I had it, I gave it to so-and-so
Sure.
and they didn't survive it.
There's a cause and effect
Yes.
that maybe doesn't come along with it.
Yes.
Because one of the biggest places where I've kind of seen it or experienced it is like with cancer survivors. So like, when they're getting their treatments, so-and-so doesn't show up and it's all of a sudden, like, even when you go into remission, there's this terrible sense of guilt of like, why me?
It worked for me and why didn't it work for them?
And so I guess the point I'm making is I totally can see what that person is saying or what that doctor is saying. Like, the cause and effect of actually giving the virus or knowing it was traced back to you, I feel would like amplify it up a level.
And there's another, I heard stories, and I don't know if you just told me one, and I heard one over the weekend of a high school football team that got shut down because the head coach was unvaccinated and the head coach got it. Yeah. So the whole team is now shut. And that is an aspect that we're going to go through in the world of, I want to get vaccinated, I did get vaccinated, or I didn't, and I'm not going to, is whether it be offices, whether it be, sports teams, whether it be theater groups, whether it be bands, whatever the case may be, that the people who are militantly, I'm not getting vaccinated, I'm not doing it, but then they show up and not that they spread it to someone else, but because they take away these opportunities for people who are a senior and this is their last year to play, or their business, it hurts the business because the people now can't come and work and make money and, however that affects. Or, someone auditioned for a part and got a part in a play, and now the play gets shut down because so-and-so got it. So there's going to be other aspects, not just the remorse from causing death, but the remorse from taking opportunities away from other people because you got it and you're unvaccinated. So that's something that's going to come too.
Freedom of choice.
Yep.
Here we go. MLB Classic.
They did not call them the Guardians.
They didn't call them the Guardians. I saw that. They had the C on the thing. I loved that they wore the Little League jerseys.
You know what? At first, I was like, those are – I don't understand why they wore – because they're – all these sports have alternative jerseys and stuff like that. But then when I read it and it was Great Lakes and what, I thought it was awesome.
That might have been like my favorite part. Here's the other part. Sorry, I'm like stealing this from you. Ohtani is huge. Like, I knew he wasn't small, but until you and again, I wasn't at the game, but just kind of seeing the backdrop of like the little leaguers behind him, and then like he is a monster.
Yes, very well. He's got 40 bombs. He leads the majors, home runs, stolen base. I think they said he's got 18 or 19. He's going to get to 20. 20 in stolen bases and home runs is a big deal. Yeah. 30 is. Said he needs a really big September to get to 40. But the Classic came, unfortunately, the weather held out, and it's still a cute little event. I want to mention this baseball topic before I forget. I'm going to segue into Major League Baseball.
Can I say one last thing about the Classic?
I'll come back to it.
Okay.
The Yankees and the Braves play tonight.
Okay.
They are both on 9-game winning streaks. Mm-hmm. It cannot have happened very many times in Major League Baseball that two teams who have won 9 or more in a row are meeting. Okay. So it's one thing for teams that are hot. To win 9 in a row is rare. Yeah. And they start a series tonight in New York, I think.
I'm going to assume the Yankees is a little more real than the Braves. Braves' schedule hasn't been very tough.
Yeah, the Yankees just played the Twins. Yeah, the Yankees are hot.
Okay.
One of the things that I took away, I was at the Classic last night. I got last-minute tickets. And I know this year's been strange because I know they always do a lottery and they always do whatever. Yeah. There are local business people who are at the game every year just kind of because they can.
Sure.
And it's, to a degree, it's become there's a level of baseball fan, but then there's a much more of a level of hobnob of the Williamsport elite.
Uh-huh.
And I think they need to do a better job of getting Little League kids with their moms and dads and people and baseball fans, and not just people who are like, I go to one game a year and it's the Classic.
Yeah.
I think they should do. And there were a lot of empty seats last night.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because of weather or I don't know if it's because of COVID. And again, I don't think they did a lottery this year. But there should be. I get their sponsors with the cross-cutters, and I get all that. But these.
No, it's a good point. It's a valid point. My one, like, if that was like the one thing you could fix, I'm assuming that's what you would want to do.
That would be the fix.
My one thing that I would want to fix, and I don't understand this, maybe it's a TV thing, whatever it is. Why do they have to start the game so late that the little leaguers have to leave before the game is over?
Well, they got up and left. Someone told me they have a 10 o'clock curfew.
Yes, they do. So if you know that.
Instead of ESPN changing their schedule, because they have Sunday Night Baseball, it starts at 7. Mm-hmm. Can't you waive the curfew on Sunday night?
Sure, whichever way you want to point the finger,
they got to do
fine.
that. Then.
But the point is, those two groups work together. And so all I'm saying is, like, there's no reason the little leaguers should have to leave before the game was over. It was like 8th inning when I was watching, and all of a sudden, like, they were just leaving. And I was like, what is going on?
This is the thing. It is so much easier to talk to these guys, as you've been around any sporting event, after the game, to give these kids, and I don't know what time these teams were flying out, I don't know where they had to go.
So just move it up.
They could.
Yeah.
But even if, like, for these kids, it's cool to watch the game from the bleachers, and it's cool for all the stuff that they met the guys earlier. But to talk to them again after the game, to have a half hour after the game on the field and in the locker room to get all that stuff.
They should do a combination. They should move it up to 6:30, and then they should push the curfew back to like 10:30. And then it's a 5-hour experience. They get to hang out afterwards, maybe get a chance to meet some guys. Now, with that being said, we're nitpicking. Like, those were just our two things that I think it's unbelievable what they pull off. Like,
it's cool.
When I drive by it on 15 and it's on the left, and I mean, watching the transformation over the past week and a half is unbelievable. It's like it's not even the same place.
It is very cool.
It's really cool.
I heard a discussion last night that they need to, who'd they say? Yankees, Phillies, Yankees, Mets. Because I know all these teams have been here. The Phillies been here, the Mets have been here, the Yankees been here. I get all those. They said Cleveland and the Angels, it didn't really work out as great. I think they wanted Trout and Ohtani, and Trout's hurt.
Sure.
So it didn't. I mean, it's so much of a better game if Mike Trout's in it than if he's not. But that's just dumb luck. What are you going to do?
No, but there's nothing. There is something though. If they're going to be the Guardians, like the Angel Guardians thing is kind of neat. No, you don't think so?
I was talking to a Cleveland fan who had a jersey. I was like, "Are you really a fan?" Oh yeah, he's like, "I'm from here, but I've had family in Cleveland. We grew up with the Indians and blah blah blah." And he's like, and I think the Guardians was the worst name on the list. And I was like, yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that.
Yeah, for baseball, it's just a little rough, but
no, but it is. I think it's a special event. I just think they need to get more of the country club people out of it. Oh no, I don't know how many.
The point I'm making is, like, you can see the difference in the stadium from the first time they did it to this time.
Oh.
I think they will get it as COVID resides, and they kind of get back to swing. I think they'll think of the things that you and I are discussing. I really do. Because from a TV product last night, it was a little honky. Like, the stadium was empty for the last 2 innings. Like, from a TV perspective, it wasn't the greatest product near the end of it.
No, and again, I know, I'm sure that has to do with COVID, and I'm sure that, but
there's executives somewhere having the conversation you and I just had.
There has to be.
Yes.
And if they want to keep, and I understand there's big sponsors, and I get that. Mm-hmm. If they want to keep, how many people does it hold? 2,500?
Probably a little more, but not
If
much.
They're like, we're going to keep 300 tickets, and we have 300 elite that have to be, but the rest of them, you have to be signed up for Little League somewhere in wherever, and somehow we're going to have a lottery, whether they have, I don't know how they do it.
Here's something too, and again, I'm not trying to be, not trying to be woke or anything like that. Can we get a softball team in there? Like, can we get, like, is there a reason, like, No, like
Never. Yeah, I don't know.
like can like a young softball team get a ticket?
But and
Like,
see,
what do you
that's one
gotta,
of the things. This is one of the things I was thinking about on my ride home last
Yeah.
night. And don't just do it. You know, if you're a little leaguer, you get 2 because, like, if they draw your family out and there's a brother and a sister who play, or a boy or 2 brothers that play,
Yeah.
we're not like, oh, this brother gets to go and this brother has to
Sure.
stay home. So, but there's no reason for the Little League Classic that of the whatever, I say there's 2,500 seats at Bowman Field.
Okay.
1,800 of those seats should be kids 14 and under.
Sure. I have no argument with you. None whatsoever. The best clickbait Jeff has ever clicked on or that Mark has ever heard. No one can figure out how eels have sex.
I just want you to know that what did I hear the word while I was listening to you research this? I think it said eel testicles.
It did.
So
no one has ever seen eel testicles because they don't exist.
Well, it is also the first time that I have ever heard in any sort of broadcast anywhere the 2 words back to back, eel testicles.
Well, the good news is it was in a TED Talk, which I feel clears that's like.
Is that where
approved.
you really got it from?
Yeah, it's a TED Talk. There's a TED Talk. There's a video called "No One Can Figure Out How Eels Have Sex."
And that's what you clicked on.
It's what I clicked on. So here's the fascinating part.
I will say this. As I am Mr. Clickbait,
yeah,
I would have skipped over that one.
No, you would not have.
I'm not. For some, like, again, ghost towns, actors and actresses that hated each other, restaurant chains that are extinct. All these things fascinate me. The mating habits of eels just doesn't do it for me. I don't know why.
But if it said no one can figure out how eels have sex, you're not clicking on that?
Does anyone care?
You just wrote a story about 2 albino alligators. You're not clicking on the.
That's
no
interesting to me.
Eels have
albino
sex.
Alligators is interesting to me.
It's an alligator that's white.
Correct.
We know everything about them. We've known eels for centuries, and we still don't know how they have sex.
Maybe it's because
eels
we're
just
giving them
show up, and you're not curious how they're just showing
Do eels know how people have sex?
Yeah, well,
maybe we're just showing them the proper amount of privacy.
You think so?
Maybe.
I don't know. I feel like there's not a lot of privacy left in.
All right, go into this because this is a little more interesting than I'm giving.
This is pretty neat. So here's the dumbed down version again. If you Google this right now, people are kind of catching on to it. There's a TED Talk video about it. Here's the basis of it. Every time they dissect an eel, there is no actual. I love that you're opening up your fridge right now. Like you were gonna pull out the eel to like.
No, I was just gonna get a drink. I'm gonna kick my feet up and I'm gonna listen to you explain this to me again.
Oh, don't kick your feet up too long. It's gonna be quick. Eels, when you dissect them, there's no reproductive organs. They have no idea how they actually mate or what the process is. For years, people thought maybe like they came up out of the mud. For years, people thought maybe like it was like a diversion, like a split.
Poof.
Yeah, almost like a split into 2. They had no idea how it was done. So here's what
it
they
was
found
like
out.
one of those, what's those things you beat on at the party and you hit it and then just
Pinata.
candy, a pinata.
Yeah.
There was just like an eel pinata somewhere.
Like,
and they just, there they were.
It could be. So here's the crazy part. Eels have 5 different life stages. For years, people thought that those were 5 different species of eel, but it's actually just one species going through the 5 stages because that's how different they look.
So it's
in
eel,
all 5 stages.
it's eel adolescence and puberty and all.
Correct. Yes. I don't know the exact names for them. So here's the crazy part. Eels live in fresh water. They live through these 5 cycles. On the 5th one, when they're old, they leave fresh water and they all go to the same place, the Saragossa Sea, which is essentially the Bermuda Triangle. So all the eels go to this place. Apparently there it's like too murky.
And people now are wondering why I thought this was fake.
It's not fake. So apparently the water's too murky and everything else. So they've never been able to actually follow the eels. Like they've never been able to find like a reproductive eel and follow it to see what happens. And then all of a sudden, all the eels that go never return. So whatever they do,
it's like an airplane.
Whatever they do, they just like, they die, they pass away, who knows? And then the little tiny larvae.
That's a good question. I would
they
say
get
larvae,
taken away by the currents of the ocean and they disperse back to like North America, South America, and Europe to the fresh water. It's incredible.
Maybe it's like Cocoon.
Possibly.
And the old ones become young again.
So the best guess, what I read today was...
Did you ever see that movie? Do you know what I'm talking about?
The best guess that they have is that they think all the eels come together and they basically disperse the egg and the sperms into the water, and somehow the eggs and the sperms meet, and then they pass away, and then the new larvae is formed and they go off. That's their best guess. So they actually have no idea how this happens.
So they think one of the theories is that they mate externally, that the egg and the sperm just randomly match in the water.
Almost picture it like like when you mix up sand or dirt in a water bottle, and it kind of just all like shifts and floats. That's their best guess is what happens underneath the water.
Well, this is stupid. I know I've made fun of this story a lot. I did read somewhere, probably in clickbait, why they think planes crash over the Bermuda Triangle or they've gone disappear.
You were telling me about this.
Because there's something about the underneath that there's a higher level of, I want to say methane, but there is something different about that area. And because as gas leaks out into the atmosphere, it messes up the normal pressure, because when airplanes fly, what keeps them in the air is the way the wings are. It creates a pressure imbalance. And that's like how curveballs spin. The rotation changes the pressure on one side, and it's because the pressure is higher on one side and lower on the other side, and the ball moves. That's the way airplane wings work, and it creates lighter air pressure above and heavier air pressure below, and that's what keeps the plane up. And that they think that this release of I want to say methane messes up the air pressure, so the wings don't keep the plane afloat. So there could be something, and then you took it one step further. Maybe this massive eel death.
Something.
I don't know, but I did find a clickbait article that said there is something scientifically different about the area where what we refer to as the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah, it's all the dead eels on the floor.
But I'm saying that I don't know if this is, this doesn't explain the reproduction, or it doesn't, but there is something different about the environment there than in the rest of the ocean, at least the surrounding ocean.
It's crazy. So here's the crazy part. Actually, and Spring just brought this up. So no eels have ever procreated in captivity. Wow, that is correct. Like, no one has ever seen eels reproduce, and they've never been able to see it in captivity or in nature.
Maybe they're just that shy. And they're like, I'm not touching you because people are watching.
Yeah. So the crazy
part,
turn
the lights out and close the door, and we will procreate. But not while all these people are Googling. Ogling is the word.
So the last piece of this that I told you, they're also the only species that can go from freshwater to saltwater. So you gave the example, like sometimes sharks will swim up sometimes they'll swim up the canals and like into the fresh water and they can survive, but that's salt to fresh and then they come back. Eels are the only ones that will live in fresh water for their stages, and then when it's time to go reproduce or whatever it is they do, they make the trek through salt water and survive it. Like, they make only species on the planet that can go from fresh to salt water.
But they only make it for so long.
Yeah, but who knows? That might be, I don't know. Like,
I know what you mean. Because some of them trek a long, long way. It's thousands of miles.
So the thing said something about their kidneys. Their kidneys, when they go into the fresh water, their kidneys swell up. And then when they leave the fresh water, their kidneys like adjust again. It's insane. It's pretty crazy when you think about it.
And I will say this. This is one of the stupidest clickbaits I've ever heard, but I will never, ever forget that eels, that with all the science that we have and all the study that we've done, that we have no idea how eels reproduce.
That's the crazy part.
That is fascinating.
It's not like I'm saying an animal to you that you've never heard of or never, like,
or
we know eels were around
at like the top of the Himalayas and we've seen 20 of them.
It would be like if we didn't know how like trout recreated.
No, I'm with you.
Or if like we didn't know how salamanders like procreate. It's crazy. Crazy.
I am with you.
All right. Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. Appreciate it.
Did I cover everything I wanted to cover?
You see above us? Do you want to point above us? Brett Crossley is still covering all the Little League World Series for us. You'll see these fancy buttons on our website. If you go there, you can see the photo gallery. You can get updates on the games at NorthcentralPa.com.
Yeah, I thought there was other things I wanted to mention, but you got to go, so we'll just go because
it's vet day for Achilles.
It is vet day for the dog. That's why the dog's a little anxious because the dog knows he's going to the vet. Because I had an annual checkup last week and I was a little anxious myself, so I feel for the dog.
See, just when I think you don't have a heart.
I have a bigger heart than you do, and we discuss that like every other day. Isn't that right, Pup? That's why you were so excited to see me. We danced for like the first 5 minutes when I got here.
Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. I'm Jeff Everett. He's Mark Lucina, and we will see you guys tomorrow.
Later.